Hi, my name is Scheril Murray Powell. I am a cannabis as well as agricultural attorney based in Florida. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Florida, but I consult everywhere else. So I'm going to get you up to speed on some cannabis law approaches. So my talk yesterday was all about what does the law look like in the United States? What's the legal landscape when it comes to cannabis? Today we're going to continue from there and talk about how you get involved, how you move the needle on laws. You would be surprised how impactful you can be when you lobby legislatively at a local level, at a state level for us, or I guess it would be a country level here, and of course I do federal work in the states. I'll tell you a little bit about what I do. So first of all, as I mentioned, I'm an attorney. That's how I got into cannabis, and then from cannabis I went into agriculture. I work with a lot of farmers. I actually farm myself now, so that was never expected. But I, along with my business partner, Billy Reynolds, and some other partners, we have 5 hemp grow licenses in Pennsylvania. We have 1 in South Carolina, and we're looking at other expansions. We have a memorandum of understanding with the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which means we'll be doing hemp-based research with that university. So we're super excited about that, and I say, if I can do it as a lawyer who's never planted anything, you can do it as well. You can be strategic and targeted as well as far as how you get into this industry. The speaker before me, Sergey, he is a part of an organization called the Us Hemp Building Association, and so am I. So we are both on the board. I'm the director of government relations for that organization, and it's all about hemp construction, hemp materials, using hempcrete, and we're really excited about the organization. You can find out more at ushba.org, US Hemp Building Association. So that's one of the things that I do. I formerly was the general counsel for Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and that is an organization focused on diversifying the cannabis industry, making sure that the population of a particular area, region, market matches what's happening at the leadership of the cannabis industry. Notice I said the leadership of the cannabis industry. It's not enough to have workers with diversity as far as racial diversity. We need to make sure that there's racial diversity, that there's geographic diversity, that there's gender diversity. We include our veterans, we include our people with disabilities, we include the parents of sick children that need flexible schedules. We need all of those individuals involved in our industry because that's what we're about. We are about the plant, respecting the plant, and making sure that we are moving forward in a unified direction.
Notice to all visitors, the show will close in approximately 25 minutes. Thank you.
So I guess I have to speed up, but making sure that we move forward in a very unified direction, because when you're indulging with the plant, you are in unity. It is a communal experience. So we want to make sure that as we build an industry, we move in that direction. I was also general counsel for Green Roads of Florida. They're one of the largest manufacturers in the country, in the United States. You may have heard of Green Roads World Products. That was my client for 3 years as they went from a $600,000 company per year to a $100 million valued company. So I got a lot of experience there, and I currently have a really great client in the CBD space. They're called Your CBD Store, or Sunflora, and they have a brick and mortar model, and they have 400 stores in the United States. What I love about their model is they're creating cannabis entrepreneurs. So in creating cannabis entrepreneurs, everyone has an opportunity to buy a store. And these stores are successful. Most of our owners own more than one store. They start with 1, then they end up with 2 and 3. So that's another opportunity. What we're going to talk about, and the title for this presentation is Harmonizing the Need for Cannabinoid Nutrition and Medicine with Archaic Laws, Old-Fashioned Laws, and Irrational Fears. That's what we're all about. So it's a long title, so what does it mean? Well, let's start with the fear. The fear that fueled Reefer Madness. Anyone heard about Reefer Madness? It's this movie. It's on Netflix right now, and it's all about how Prohibition came about, and it's about they're creating this propaganda that if you indulge in cannabis, you're going to play the piano like a mad person. You're going to jump off a building out of a window. White women are going to start sleeping with black men. It's all this propaganda to restrict the industry, and it was extremely, extremely successful, but it is irrational fear. Our laws won't naturally on their own get to be where they're in favor of cannabis. We have to force our laws to comply with what was intended in the first place. It is not a passive exercise. You are going to have to go out, go to your capital, go speak to Parliament, the people who represent you. Election season, when they're asking for your vote, say, what are your views on cannabis so we can understand whether we should vote for you. It's not a passive experience. We need to harmonize our desire to correct. We need to harmonize our desire to correct with the need to advance. So we tend to, and these are mistakes that we made in the US that we don't want you to make here. In the cannabis industry, we tend to be like, all right, well, they didn't let us get flower last year, so we're going to go back this session and we're going to get flower. That is not a strategy. Getting what they didn't give us last time is not a strategy. We have to think what's going to really progress and advance and ask for all of those things, even if we didn't get that one thing last year. It's not about correcting because you're always one step behind. It is about really having a strategic plan and direction for the future. What is the world that we want to create? What are the laws to get us there? That's focused on advancing. We need to stay focused on our true goal, absolute true goal, which is patients, making sure that we have access for our patients. When we go and we speak to people of power, we always mention the patients, but when we're in practice in our businesses, are we truly putting patients first? That's what I'm going to encourage you to do. So where do the fears come from? We talked about reefer madness. Well, some people may have prior experience with other narcotics or with alcohol, and they're like, if I get high or someone gets high, they're going to feel like this, they're going to behave like this. With cannabis, it's elevation. It really isn't like an intoxication where there's the aggression and there's that feeling of not being in control. It's a very different experience, so don't judge it based on how opioids affect people or how alcohol affects people. We need to break those stereotypes and live in truth, especially the truth that CBD doesn't make you high or intoxicate at all. There's been programming and brainwashing for 80 years. You can't just turn that around. You have to be consistent. And a part of that is coming out of the cannabis closet yourselves. So I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a medical patient for cannabis. I have my card for Florida, and I tell everyone that. Why? Because when they look at me, they don't see what their stereotype is for a cannabis user. They're thinking, okay, you're not a hippie, you're not always high, you execute on your job. We need people to understand that cannabis is in a lot of people's lives, and it doesn't make them a low-functioning individual. We also have tainted research from companies that could do the research in the past, like Big Pharma, that we haven't seen the truth being released. Now that in the States, we have the Farm Bill of 2018, it allows us to do research on hemp. It makes the universities feel more comfortable. Now we're really going to explore the plant. Now we're going to really understand the true capacities of using cannabis in your life for wellness. So how do we combat these irrational fears? Because we're in agreement, it's irrational, we've been brainwashed. How do we turn it around? Well, we need strategy, like I said, advance, not correct. And science, we have to explore and get to know the plant and release the information whether we like the results or not. We have to release the information. We have to share the truth about the patient condition. So Our patients in the U.S., and one thing I didn't see as much in this conference, is a strong presence of actual patient families. And I think because it's a newer industry here, we're going to see more of those. So we need to make sure it's a welcoming environment for the child who's in a wheelchair, who may have some type of ailment that aesthetically is very obvious. We need to make sure that they're welcome here, because those are the people that we're going to take with us to the Capitol. And when we're speaking to Parliament, say, this is the child that you are keeping from getting their medicine. This is the veteran that served our country that you're saying no to because you don't think it's something you should do. That's your own morality. Public speaking and writing. I speak wherever I'm invited to. I will say yes if I can fit it into my schedule because it's important work. You need to be heard from. I'll tell you, when I first got into the cannabis industry in 2016, I went to one event to learn. And my second event, I was a speaker, and I haven't stopped since then. So don't wait till this magical accreditation that you are an expert enough to speak. Once you research on your own, you go to these events, spread the word. I'm ordaining you all to be experts and educators. Do the research and get the word out there. That's the only way things will change. And then show up at every level of government. So your local council, your parliamentarian, show up. If you can get to London, get to London. If you can only do it once a year, go once a year. Whatever you need to do. But we all have a responsibility. It's we the people. We the people are the ones who are in charge. So I also work in Jamaica, throughout the Caribbean, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and so I go into new markets and I have similar conversations about, hey, everything you've been told is a lie. Your people need this. It will generate employment. It'll generate revenues. It'll lead to a healthier society. These are the stakeholders that I target and work with as I travel around the world with legalization efforts. First, the politicians. They'll tell you what the tone is for that country and how they feel about it. They are also the ones who will influence their peers better than you can. So identify the politicians, know how they feel about it, and find a way to work with them. Physicians. Physicians are always the gatekeepers for the cannabis industry when it comes to nutrition and medicine. They need to be informed and educated. There are physicians that know less than you guys sitting here about the endocannabinoid system. Pharmacists. We used to be like, pharmacists, you're over here. We're the cannabis industry. Now, they're sitting next to us at these conferences. They're registering CBD products. We need to bring them into the fold so they understand how we operate, so they execute in line with what we're doing. Professors and scientists. We're doing the research now because we have the approval. Let's get the research done. Let's be included in how they design that research. Patients are the core, the center for what we do, and they're very important. When we look at plant life cultivators, that's my way of saying farmer. And farmers need cannabis. They need hemp. They need this as a diversification crop. They need it. I've heard maybe it's not going to best to be grown in this climate. Hemp can be grown in so many different environments. Don't restrict your thinking based on what's happened before. We have climate control. We have climate control for athletes who are Olympians so they can feel like they're in Colorado or in Salt Lake City or they're in Alaska. We can climate control plants and grow great plants anywhere in the world, and it's great revenues. Partners in funding, those are our investors. So we need to lead them and not have them lead us. Because sometimes they're a little bit moved by the money when we need to be focused on our goal of helping people. And then finally, the people. That's you and I. We're the people that drive the whole operation. So quickly, I'm going to talk about law, because as a lawyer, I get calls from other lawyers saying, I have this case, but there's a cannabis question. Cannabis affects every single area of law. Every area of law, you'll get a cannabis question, whether it's government law, lobbying, health and medical law, real estate, criminal law has always been impacted by cannabis because a cannabis charge is usually your gateway into the prison system in the United States and around the world. A nonviolent cannabis charge will be your gateway into the prison system. It's not a gateway drug. It's actually an exit drug off of other addictive medicines like opioids, but it is the gateway into the prison system. We're going to change that. Real estate, patent, trademark, IP. I wish I was one or could be one, but you have to have a science background in the States to be an IP attorney. So that's great work. Everyone's looking to protect their intellectual property. Insurance, administrative, family law. A lot of these custody cases are turning because before, if you were found to be using marijuana, they take your kids. They take your kids. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen because there are very good parents that are discriminated. You can have a glass of wine at dinner with your kids sitting next to you, but you can't take cannabis. There's something wrong with that. We need to change that perspective. So family law is changing. Land use and agricultural, employment law as well. We're seeing states like the state of Nevada where they're saying you can't use a drug test to restrict someone from employment. We need to put those protective laws in place right here. And international law. So moving on. The importance of decriminalization, we spoke about that. In the United States, we had the war on drugs, which was really the war on poor people. The war on poor people, where they said it was the war on drugs. It was misguided, and all it did was generate income for the prison system. We're criminalizing patients. We're criminalizing patients, and that needs to stop. When parents go to jail, their kids suffer. They go into a foster care system. They go in abusive home environments. Who benefits from that? Nobody. Nobody. And there's an issue of disparate sentencing. So I'm going to kind of give you a little peephole into law school. When I was in law school at FIU, I had this professor. His name was Dr. Stanley Fish. He is very famous worldwide as far as a philosopher and the philosophy of the law. The philosophy of the law is called jurisprudence. So I had this jurisprudence class. I was like, this is perfect for me because it was a shorter class. It met once a week. I was like, I'm going to ace this class, then I'll have time to finish the rest of my classes in a few weeks later and not have to worry about that final. Well, it was one of the most difficult classes I had, and he challenged me the most. The first day, what we learned is that judges have an obligation to exclude their own morality when making decision making. That's what we all believe. We're like, you come into a courtroom, you shouldn't be thinking about your ex-wife and why this situation is similar to your ex-wife's or your ex-husband's or your kid. It's supposed to be a clean slate every single time that you are looking at a decision you have to make. And I assert that with lawmakers, it should be the same. Lawmakers should go into their legislative session and think, what am I going to do that's best for the people of this country? Not how I feel about it. We're seeing a lot of abortion-related legislation in the States, and that's one of the challenges is because people are like, I think it's wrong, so I'm going to say nobody can do it. Where, we want you to come in and think about what's best for people overall from a health perspective. So cannabis activists, we are more legal positivists. We're anti-foundationalists. We want them to give us a fresh start. We want them to give us a clean slate. However, that's not based in reality. So we have to adjust our thinking. So legal positivism is really thinking the same ways, thinking when people walk into a courtroom as a judge, they're going to leave their morality at the door. When a lawmaker goes in to make legislation, they're going to leave their morality. Not realistic. So it's difficult because people bring their other stuff, their garbage, their baggage with them when they're doing their jobs. So therefore, it's impossible to separate the law from morality. So what do we do about it? Well, what we do is we inject our morality into those situations. So we're going to say, listen, again, like the example I gave, this sick child is being denied medicine. So they're not, even though they haven't thought of that before, we have to take them, the patient stories, the realities of when you make this law, you're telling this person no, and that you'd rather them die than them try cannabis. And that's how we have to approach this situation. I'm going to give you some legal language that you can use, your honorary lawyers, when you are advocating on behalf of people, when you are trying to change the laws, when you're trying to get permissive legislation in this country. So words that we use as lawyers that you are now able to use are like words like unconscionable. So you can say, that is unconscionable for you to deny someone something that's going to save their lives. That's unconscionable. How can you do that? The legislative intent. So you can say, you are frustrating the legislative intent of when that legislation was done a few years ago. When the Dangerous Drugs Act was put into place in the Caribbean, it wasn't to prevent this person from getting medicine. It's to restrict a dangerous industry. Well, we now have the research. We now know that this is not something harmful. It's something that helps people. So don't frustrate the legislative intent. And that's been really helpful in the States. There was a case, the Hemp Industries Association versus the Us Dea, where Congress members who were there when the 2014 Farm Bill was written, they did an open letter. They did an amicus brief saying, listen, when we passed the 2014 Farm Bill, we expected CBD to be free. We didn't expect you to restrict it. Our legislative intent when we filed that for the pilots was that people would be able to get access to this. That's how important legislative intent is. And then also, this is in direct conflict with the will of the people. At the end of the day, we are in charge. We run things. We elect people to represent our interests. But we need to call out when what they're doing is in direct conflict with what we would have wanted. So we need to elevate and share the science, hence the research aspects. We need to elevate and share the patient stories. And then we need to incorporate our professionalism as whatever we do for a living and say, yeah, I'm a cannabis user and I'm a cannabis user too. I may not look like it. I may not be your stereotype, but I'm coming out of the cannabis closet so that we can move this legislation forward. So how do we harmonize? I always talk about Rastafari and the tenets of the faith. I am not Rastafarian, I am a Christian. However, I'm Jamaican and I've always been around the Rastafarian faith. So I observed the faith and the livity, the way of life, and that's how I approach my work, to be aligned with that, because I think that way of living is closer to the plant. So that's where I come up with these concepts of conquering, collaborating, and cooperating. So when I talk about conquering, we need to think victory. We need to be positive about the change that is going to come. There's still time to change the laws. We can still build the structure that will allow for freedom for patients. We can still build a structure that will allow for diversity and inclusion. We need to think with a conquering spirit. Collaboration, finding like minds. This is a great place for it. I met Carol yesterday, and then we know that we're aligned on a lot of things. I said, listen, we're looking to start a Minorities for Medical Marijuana chapter here. You would be great to be in the leadership because I see that you're passionate about diversity and inclusion. So we're alike on that, and we're collaborating to bring that to the country of England, or the United Kingdom, I should say. Cooperation is equally important. And when you have cooperation, it's really with people that don't necessarily feel the same way. So when you go to the legislator, and I had a legislator, a senator for the state of Florida, and he was like, I'm a recovering addict. I'm against the marijuana legalization. I'm against cannabis because I'm 20 years clean. And I had conversations with him where one day I'd go and I say, this is my client's product. I'm just going to drop it off here so you can look it over. Look at the label, how it doesn't look professional. And then the next time I drop in his office and I'd be like, hey, listen, I know you guys are going to be discussing it in your hearing, but I just wanted you to know These are some of the patients that I work with that have used our products and they've been successful. Hey, I'm going to email you this video with a Parkinson's patient that used CBD and they're no longer shaking. Or I'll send you an epilepsy video of someone having a seizure and they're using CBD oil. By the way, did you know CBD oil doesn't make you high? Those are the actions that we use to get people who are not traditionally on our side so that they will cooperate with us. And that effort is so very important. So key areas of focus, as I said, the way forward is strategy with our advancement and science. So how do we optimize that? Well, we need to be involved in the research protocols. All research, all levels, we need to understand and make sure that we are represented as they're designed and as the results are shown. We need to organize lobby days. That is the easiest thing to do, is really just say, hey, this organization is going to work with this organization. Let's say it's Minorities for Medical Marijuana is going to work with the Hemp Industries Association and Women Grow. We're going to do a lobby day, and we're going to the Capitol as a group. Best thing you can do. Easy, doesn't cost anything besides people getting together, maybe renting a bus together, and organizing education for our legislators. We should have one lobby day a quarter. We need to do lobby days locally, and we need to do lobby days at the federal level, educating our legislators so they can make the right choices and the right decisions as they represent us, because we are the people. We need to insert cannabis science and education in other conferences. It's all great because we kind of all feel the same. We're here at a cannabis conference. Most of us aren't here just curious. Most of us are like, no, I believe cannabis is a good thing. But what about the neuroscience conference? What about the barristers conference? What about the journalism conference?
Thank you for joining us for this year's Hemp CBD Expo. Sadly, it has now come to an end. Can you please find your way to the exit?
And now we're going to wrap up. But what about those other conferences? It's really important that we make sure that all the organizations we're currently a part of in our occupations, that we take cannabis education to those spaces. So visit legislators at their local offices. And we're not celebrating just yet. We're moving forward. So I'm going to skip through the last part. I thank you so much for your time. Thanks for welcoming me back, England. And I have my contact information up there. You'll see my business partner, Billy Reynolds. He's based in Jamaica, so if you have any activity in Jamaica, South America, he kind of handles that side of the business for us. And I am accessible. That's my real cell phone number, because I believe in this. I live this. Every single day of my life, I wake up and I do work for the furtherance of the cannabis industry. And I invite you to do the same, because that is a life worth living. Thank you so much.